The first memory I have of shame, not the childish heat of a scolding but a deep-grown anger at myself and the world, is from that afternoon in the auditorium at Collegio Estadual Ministro Salgado Filho. It was supposed to be perfect, a closing speech after 5 years of relentless exams, brutal commutes across the sprawl of São Paulo, and the daily grey of sacrifice. I had rehearsed those 4 minutes in front of the bathroom mirror with the door locked, rolling the words through my head until they blurred into a single tangled hope that if I said it out loud, my dream would become real to them. I wore my only decent pair of shoes, the ones I saved for funerals and weddings. The stage light burned my face and I could see Tia Luisa in the second row, her hair set in stiff, ambitious curls. Behind her, the rude knot of cousins, Jorge, Felipe, Isabella, hunched together, already smirking. My mother sat on the aisle, hands gripped white around her purse strap. I cleared my throat. The microphone squeaked. "I want to study robotics," I said. The words felt braver than I was. "To change the way machines help people, especially here. One day I'll build." Snickers rippled through the hall, loud as rain on a tin roof. Jorge let out a mock whistle. "Ear cute o novo Einstein," he called, bitterness wrapped in humor, and laughter swelled. Principal Araujo didn't bother to hide his grimace. "Thank you, Gabriel," he cut in, coming up beside me and putting a clamped, formal hand on my shoulder. "Let's hear from our next graduate." I left the stage to the quick music of other people's applause, my ridiculous dream. I swallowed hard and clapped for the next kid, even as my hands shook. The afternoon air outside was thick and cut with exhaust as everyone spilled out of the building. The sun had already started to slip behind towers and telephone lines, and I trailed behind my family in the schoolyard. I wanted to vanish. Instead, I caught the cloud of my cousins before I could reach the battered car. Felipe slapped me on the back as if congratulating a child for not crying. "Robots, even your sneakers are generic, primo. Forget it, go do business, something useful." Isabella rolled her eyes. "Are you going to build a robot to clean up Villa Madonna, or maybe fix the metro?" She arched a brow, ringlets bouncing. "Just do something normal. Or you'll wind up selling cell phones on the street." Every word felt like an old bruise. I never spoke up, not really, not when it counted. My mother offered me a half-pitying smile. "They mean well, Gabriel," she whispered, but I saw the flicker of relief on her face. Some part of her agreed. That night, alone in my shoebox room, I stared at the ceiling. I pictured 100 tiny metal figures building each other up, one gear at a time, a parade of mechanical hope. I clung to that vision as shame twisted hot in my gut. The next few years, every day on the Blue Line 2 train to USB, the weight of those taunts rode with me. The university campus was another world. There, older students talked about AI the way my family talked football, and greasy-haired professors waved their hands in lectures about neural networks and actuation. I didn't always belong. Money was a daily equation, bus fares, faded notebooks, the constant threat of fees. At night, I tutored math online for maybe 20 reais an hour, scraping just enough together for an overcooked coxinha and once a textbook borrowed for months. My roommates rotated through: Raul, who sold weed on the side, Judah, who cried herself into insomnia before dropping out. Every time someone left, the cold in the apartment doubled. Even so, I tinkered, picking cast-off parts from trash bins behind the engineering building, snapping together fraying wires, teaching myself Python in the glow of a third-hand laptop. Every model I built failed and failed again. Motors overheated, circuit boards fried, batteries shorted out. But in the small hours, my hands steady, I saw something beautiful in scraps, the possibility of a new movement. Whenever calls came from home, they sounded the same. "How much longer? Is anyone hiring, Gabriel? Why not try the prefectura, get a stable job?" Even my mother's voice grew thin and worried. The breaking point for me arrived 2 years later at Christmas. The family house in Sapopemba was stifling, heavy with steam and the scent of clove-laced ham. By midnight, half the cousins were loud from beer. I lingered by the wall, desperate to avoid conversation, but Jorge and Isabella found me. Jorge grinned, red-faced. "So, Robo-Boy, what do you invent this year? A machine to do your laundry?" I managed a half-smile. "Something close," I said, though I hadn't built anything that worked in 6 months. "Take a picture when it walks to the favela by itself," Isabella jeered. The others cackled, and from the kitchen I saw my mother's eyes flick away. I went home early, silent. I wanted to quit. I could almost feel their laughter inside me like a sickness. But after that night, something in me hardened. If I left, if I caved, I'd spend the rest of my life knowing I'd proved them right. My shame shifted subtly. It burned, but now it also burned clear. In the following semester, I cornered professors for internships. Most rejected me, but one, Professor Santoro, was willing to risk a desperate student. In her lab, I found discipline and patience. She tutored me in C++ when nothing made sense, let me waste cheap filament on a 3D printer no one else cared about. I worked every weekend for free. I started sleeping under my workbench when the dorm fees threatened eviction. We chased competitions. At first, we lost spectacularly. Motors jammed, wires snapped loose, code crashed mid-demonstration, and left our prototypes whirring helpless on the floor. But I kept at it. Less sleep, more coffee, less pride, more humility. Failure changed from a shame to a challenge. 3 years after graduation, after all those derisions, I was part of the team that built Armada, the first low-cost, modular prosthetic hand designed and assembled entirely from repurposed materials sourced locally. The media barely noticed. The university held a press day. I stood awkward beside my model as flashes went off, not quite trusting the praise. But the feeling when I saw 8-year-old Raphael use that hand for the first time, that eclipsed every mocking smirk I'd ever endured. That spring we won a grant, then a second one. I became a name whispered in labs, sometimes with respect, sometimes suspicion. That guy from Sapopemba, he's hungry, I overheard. People who never mocked me still seemed to expect me to fail, just on a larger scale. Santoro pushed me to present at an international conference. São Paulo's robotics scene was exploding, but showing up in Berlin face-to-face with giants was something else. The anxiety made me nauseous, but I stood there, almost lucid with fear, and told them about the kids in Freguesia do Acute who could draw again, the grandfather who fixed his bike with his left hand for the first time. When I returned, emails poured in, collaborators, sponsors, skeptics wanting to poke holes. With each answer I gave, the knot in my chest loosened. It got hard again, sure, but the old shame didn't stick. News of the project found its way back home piecemeal, a cousin scrolling social media, an aunt whose boss's nephew heard about Gabriel's robot hand. Disbelief swirled. I didn't go home for a long time, content to send presents for holidays without explanations. 4 years after graduation, I had news I couldn't keep in a text. The university signed a deal with the Prefeitura de São Paulo and a private company for citywide distribution of Armada. Over 1,000 units, all built in a new facility overseen by me. They wanted to do a launch ceremony in the neighborhood to make it real for the people, as a senator said. I hesitated, dreading in that small, poor corner of myself the old chorus of sneers, but Santoro squeezed my shoulder. "You're the proof, Gabriel, go back." The weeks leading up to the event, I felt like I was carrying a secret. I rehearsed, rewrote my speech, made lists of faces who might show up. I half dreamed of people, my cousins, my uncles, even Araujo the principal, rising out of the crowd to judge all over again. The morning of the launch, the air on Rua Taquari was a damp thundercloud, the streets pulsing with horns and impatient voices. They built a small platform, hung banners in green and blue, set out rows of plastic chairs, city cameras everywhere, my name printed so large on a placard that local shopkeepers stopped to stare. By noon, the seats were filled, neighbors, small kids clutching their mothers' hands, teachers, 2 priests, a smattering of city officials. Near the front, trying not to look nervous, was my mother in her church clothes, lips pressed tight. Behind her, I saw my old classmates, the faces of my cousins, and, unmistakably, Jorge and Isabella, their expressions somewhere between curiosity and skepticism. Even the principal lurked nearby, arms crossed doubtfully. I climbed onto the stage, the mic felt heavy, the sun bore down and glued my shirt to my back. I spoke slower than I'd ever dared before without apology. When I stood at graduation here, I said I would build machines to help people. Many people laughed. I used to be ashamed of that, of dreaming too loud, of being too stubborn. But I am here and we are here because people like us must keep dreaming. Cameras clicked. I set the first prototype, glinting beneath its new white and blue paint, on the table. Then Raphael, now almost a teenager, joined me wearing a new city-issue Armada arm. He waved shyly. His mother was openly crying. I pressed the button, the hand flexed, almost human, the fingers curling and uncurling in careful sequence. "This," I said, voice steady, "was built by people from here, in São Paulo, for São Paulo." The crowd went silent. Jorge's mouth hung open a little. Isabella's cheeks darkened. She started clapping, then stopped, hesitated, and clapped again, louder. My mother's face was wet. The principal nodded slowly, as if seeing me for the first time. I let Raphael pick up a paper flower from the table, a test of grip we'd practiced for months. He smiled, holding it up, and for a brief second the crowd exhaled at once. Something in the air shifted, it felt clean, light. After the speeches, everyone crowded forward. Neighbors, old teachers, friends I'd thought lost to time. Each one wanted to touch the arm, to ask questions. My uncles, sheepish, gripped my shoulder and pulled me into rough embraces. I never understood, Gabriel once said, but I'm proud. Isabella waited until the crowd thinned. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine at first. I didn't think, we just didn't know. It doesn't matter, she gestured toward the prosthetic. I think Tiana cried. Jorge gave a shy, lopsided smile. Remember graduation, you proved us all wrong, Primo. I could have laughed or kicked back in pride, but mostly I felt relief, something cool, settling deep, as if for the first time I was breathing without flinching. It's all of us, I said, and I meant it. That evening the banners came down and the city officials rolled away in government cars. The sun set red over the rooftops, its light catching on the teeth of broken antennas, the jagged angles of old tile. I lingered with my mother, listening as kids rode by on rusted bikes, shouting about robots. She squeezed my hand. You always were stubborn, Philho, I thank God for that now. Later, I walked alone through the neighborhood's winding alleyways, the city's old breath pulsing in my ears. The walls were still crumbling in places, the pavement cracked and restless, but something in the air had changed. The shadows felt warmer, less hostile. I knew there would be new struggles, machines that failed, programs that needed rewriting, skeptical voices sharpening again in new forms. The world was still hard, but I had come home, and with every step my shame felt smaller, replaced by something new. Courage, maybe, or something even quieter, a faith no longer in distant dreams, but in the rhythm of making and remaking, of trying and failing and finally returning.